So we've now officially seen the new iPhones, with the iPhone 17 at $800 the iPhone Air at $1,000, and the 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max at $1,100 and $1,200 respectively, all of which officially launched September 19th. Of the group we got this year, it would seem to me there is a particular model that is far and away the best value, even taking into account Apple's budget iPhone 16e at $600. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're going to be talking about the iPhone 17 and whether or not it's worth buying. And I won't beat around the bush here, I really think that it is. In fact, I think it's incredible value and is probably going to be the iPhone to buy for the vast majority of people. At the beginning of this month, September, the iPhone 16 would run you $800, and with that would come the far inferior 6.1-inch 60Hz display, as well as Apple's A18 chip and 128 gigabytes of storage. Now, with the iPhone 17 at the exact same price tag, you're getting a brighter, larger 6.3-inch ProMotion display, Apple's A19 chip, and 256 gigabytes of storage. Oh, and also the better 48-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and the significantly upgraded selfie camera. The fact that the 17 doubles the starting storage without raising the price, on its own, that makes this phone far better value than the 16 in my eyes. And everything else we get is just kind of icing on the cake. So we're gonna kick this video off with more of what exactly makes this phone so much better than its predecessor, and then we'll break down some more detail of what's new, how it compares to the iPhone Air and the iPhone 17 Pro, and of course, the big one, whether or not this is the right phone to buy for you. Because it doesn't matter how great I might say the value of the iPhone 17 is, you might not be the kind of user that is going to want one. It only has 2 camera lenses on the back and is lacking a lot of the Pro hardware and feature set of the more expensive iPhones. I'm not afraid to say that I think the iPhone 17 is probably a better phone than the iPhone Air, at least for the vast majority of people, especially when you take into account the fact that it's $200 cheaper. You can make the argument that it was better even if they were the same price, to be honest. But even so, even if it's not as good value, some people might want the Air. And for myself, I don't want an iPhone 17. If I'm going to get a new one, and I'm planning to, I'm going to get the iPhone 17 Pro because that better matches my personal use case. I make YouTube videos. I want something that can take a lot of good video. I want to take advantage of those camera systems. This all being said, the fact of the matter is the iPhone 17 is probably most definitely the best value iPhone Apple sells right now. The iPhone 17 has managed to fix almost every problem I had with the iPhone 16, which itself was a fine phone, but man, Apple kind of hit it out of the park with the 17 here, even if you wouldn't know it at first glance comparing the two devices. Here's the thing, on the surface, the iPhone 17 looks identical to the 16. The design is nearly the same. There is no Plus model anymore, which would normally cost $900. Instead, the 17 has increased in size to 6.3 inches, while also reducing the bezels a bit, and you can tell it apart from the 16 if you pay attention, at least from the front, but man, these phones look very similar otherwise. And if you remember back to last year, I was pretty vehement about my dislike for the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus, just because they felt like terrible value. And the main reason for that poor value came down to one thing, at least above all others, and that was the lack of a ProMotion display, as they were still stuck at 60 Hz. The screen in general was obviously not as good as the Pro models, and it didn't get as bright, but it was the refresh rate that really bothered me, even if it was something that an average user might not notice or care about. But I'd argue that even if 60 Hz doesn't matter to someone buying a new phone, that person should still be purchasing a product that has qualities congruent with the amount of money being spent, and I don't think the iPhone 16 met that criteria. It'd be hard-pressed to find any Android phone sold for $800 with only 60 Hz, and thankfully Apple has finally fixed that this year. And not only have they fixed it, but they've slapped a pro-quality display on here with a bunch of big improvements to the brightness and overall visibility. Thanks in part to the new anti-reflective coating, the iPhone 17 should be more readable than ever outdoors in the sun, all running at that beautifully smooth 120 Hz. We also finally get the always-on display, something that Pro iPhones have had since the 2022 iPhone 14 Pro. Despite it really not being a Pro-level feature, even if you don't really care about ProMotion, I think most will appreciate having an always-on display, at least as an option, even if you prefer to turn it off completely. The second main reason I think the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus were such terrible value would come a little bit after their original launch, with the advent of the iPhone 16e at $600. And while this may not feel like much of a budget phone given that price, it's about as close as Apple's gonna give us. And in any case, the 16e was, at least for the most part, just as good as the iPhone 16, even better in a couple ways, with only a few notable compromises. It's only got the one camera lens on the back, it still has the notch instead of the dynamic island, and there's no camera control button or even MagSafe support, which was dumb. But it had the A18 chipset, with one less GPU core, but still, full Apple Intelligence support. It had much better battery life than the iPhone 16 according to Apple's own metrics, and again, it was $200 cheaper. It made the iPhone 16 feel completely redundant within Apple's lineup. I couldn't see why you would buy that phone unless you desperately wanted the ultra-wide camera, when you could save a good amount of money and get the 16e. Or, spend an extra couple $100 and get a far superior device in the 16 Pro. The iPhone 16 was too close to the 16e when it should have instead served as the perfect middleman between the budget model and the Pro, just as its price would suggest. Fast forward to now, late 2025, and suddenly things are very different. The iPhone 17 is a much better phone, and I think it's also a much better buy than the 16e, even if it's more expensive. Promotion and double the storage alone I think is worth $200. Now, it's not such great value that you would never buy a phone like the 16e, but at least the balance has been restored. You could make an argument for either phone being better value. If we do see an iPhone 17e in 2026, I think it'll probably be a competitive device, but that the 17 is still strong enough that I'd be shocked if we saw the same scenario as we did with the 16 and 16e this year. The iPhone 17 finally feels like a phone worthy of its price point, and I'm a fan of doing away with the Plus model completely as well. Not only is 6.3 inches a pretty good in-between size, but those Plus iPhones didn't really sell too well anyways, and always felt pointless when you could get a Pro iPhone for not much more. Not to keep beating a dead horse here, but for some more perspective on just how terrible Apple's lineup was last year, the iPhone 16 Plus would cost you $900, and for $100 more, you could get the 6.3-inch iPhone 16 Pro that also came with 128 gigs. What you gained for that $100 was immense, with a Pro display, Pro cameras, Pro chipset, you name it. This year, Apple's done away with the $1,000 Pro model iPhone, but they haven't actually increased prices, just dropped the 128 gig option completely. The 17 Pro will cost you a pretty penny at $1,100 for the 256 gig model. And is it really worth $300 more than the iPhone 17? It does bring a lot, particularly in the camera systems, but you could also save a lot. And I'd say the 17 Pro isn't so much better anymore that the iPhone 17 feels irrelevant. The gap between the phones is far, far smaller than the one between the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro. But okay, we get it. Apple's really fixed their lineup with the iPhone 17, right? You're not getting screwed if you get this phone, like you might have been kind of getting screwed with the iPhone 16. And this is the natural upgrade if you're coming from an iPhone 12, 13, 14, any non-Pro. This is a good year to jump aboard now that we finally have ProMotion. So okay, we get it. Apple's really fixed their lineup with the iPhone 17, right? Well, yeah, mostly, but there is another phone that sort of complicates things. A model that's technically between the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro, but is arguably worse than both of them. At $1,000, the iPhone Air is confusing, and I'll be doing another video just like this talking about it, so we'll stick to comparing it to the 17 for the most part in this video. The iPhone Air is above all a gimmick phone, a device that Apple has made as thin as they possibly can, seemingly just for the heck of it, because there's really not a whole lot of actual practical benefit gained from that form factor. I mean, it's super cool, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to make your life better, and with that size comes some serious compromise. The most obvious benefit of the 17 over the Air is the second camera lens on the back. The iPhone 17's got the same main 48 megapixel wide lens, but then also that 48 megapixel ultra wide, which is a solid upgrade over the 12 megapixel ultra wide that was on the 16 last year. Now, I'll be honest, I don't use my ultra wide camera a whole lot when I'm not specifically taking pictures for reviews, partly because the one on my 15 Pro is clearly lower quality than the main wide lens, but mainly because I find myself more likely to zoom in than zoom out. But even so, I like having the option to use my ultra wide if I want to, and I certainly wouldn't want to lose it. With that main 48 megapixel lens, both the iPhone Air and the 17 have the default option for 2x zoom, where the sensor crops into 12 megapixels, so you get the telephoto option without the need for a second camera lens at all. Even so, the 17 having the ultra wide provides far more versatility, as well as one-time zoom macro photos if you so desire, and some features like that. Also, did I mention it's $200 cheaper than the Air? The Air is a little bigger at 6.5 inches, but being as thin as it is, you'll find better battery life on the 17, or at least an extra 3 hours of video playback according to Apple, and the battery itself is physically larger too. You also have mmWave connectivity with the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro that isn't on the iPhone Air, and the iPhone Air only has one speaker, which is kind of brutal. The iPhone Air does have Apple's A19 Pro chipset and 12 gigabytes of RAM versus the non-Pro A19 and 8 gigabytes of RAM on the iPhone 17, but for real-life usage, this is going to make very little difference, at least for the next few years. In the long run, the Air might perform better, but right now, in typical daily tasks, the difference will be negligible in almost anything. I'm not saying that the iPhone Air is a bad phone. If anything, it's a marvel of engineering, but I'm not sure who it's for, or who's gonna buy it when you can get a phone that's nearly every bit as good and sometimes even better, all for $200 less. It's just, thicker. The iPhone 17's value is so strong that it puts the iPhone Air in a tough spot. Had the 17 been $900 instead of $800, as was often rumored, maybe it'd be a different story, but it's not. At $799, the 256GB iPhone 17 is easily Apple's best value iPhone, and I strongly recommend it if it matches your use case. It's the perfect phone for almost anyone, with quality of life features that we've needed desperately on these non-Pro models for years. It finally doesn't feel like the non-Pro iPhone flagship is compromising purely for the sake of making the Pro models look better. When the iPhone 11 Pro launched in 2019, the iPhone 11 was almost every bit just as good as that phone, but with a lower quality display and only 2 camera lenses instead of 3, all for $300 cheaper. Somewhere along the line, probably with the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus, Apple screwed up this balance they've been maintaining. The non-Pro phones began to get more expensive, but also compromised more than they used to. But finally, in 2025, the iPhone 17, I believe, has gotten the lineup back to where it should be. You do get a lot for your money with the iPhone 17 Pro, but not so much that it makes it a no-brainer purchase over the iPhone 17. The 17 might not be as flashy or as exciting as the other phones, but it's, in my opinion, the phone for almost anyone. If you're on an iPhone 14 right now, a 13, and you're ready to upgrade, maybe older, this is the phone you probably want to get. It's got stellar cameras, stellar hardware, a stellar display, and I've got to hand it to Apple. It seems that they've finally nailed this phone this year, and I'm very glad to see it. So in conclusion, yes, the iPhone 17 is absolutely worth buying if you're interested. Make sure you leave your thoughts on it in the comments down below. Any of you planning on buying it, make sure you let me know. I'll still be doing a full iPhone buying guide hopefully soon, including some of the options on the used market if you're into that. And then I'll also be doing a couple more videos on the iPhone Air and the iPhone 17 Pro, so stay tuned. Maybe hit that like button if you found this video interesting or helpful, and consider subscribing for more content just like this. We do have a Discord server. I was actually watching the Apple event with a bunch of guys over there. It was a ton of fun, so maybe come by, say hi, great community. Would love to have you, and huge shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for your support. It makes a huge difference, and I just really appreciate all of you, and thank you all for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech. This is my dog, Cola. She's been on the desk a bit, but yeah, this is Cola. Also from 91 Tech, actually, and we will see you all next time.